Fridays at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way, from off-season to game day. Yeah, we talk back. It's the 49ers Cutback.
It's 49ers Cutback podcast time. Welcome to the show, everyone. 49ers versus Texans game reaction. And of course, it was a tough one. I wasn't able to go live after the game. I've been feeling under the weather, so I'm actually pushing through this one. And that's what it looked like the 49ers were doing in this game as well, was pushing through, because it was not a good performance from the jump. You saw the opening drive for the Houston Texans go down the field methodically. 49ers had opportunities to get a stop, force a longer field goal, potentially get off the field. Missed tackles, created more opportunities for the Houston Texans to continue a fourth down conversion, help the Houston Texans continue to continue the drive. And then finally the defense stiffened up and held a field goal. And you felt like, you know what, maybe the 49ers can get back on track if their offense can come out and get something going. And one of the most interesting offensive starts I've ever seen due to, the officials and what was going on with the penalties. You saw, they were legit penalties. It was just odd. You had the 5-yard penalty against the 49ers, a 5-yard penalty against the Houston Texans. Then on a first down run by Mac Jones, you got a 15-yard face mask against Jawan Jennings. It was, I don't think I've ever seen, 1st and 14, 1st and 13, first and, it just kept changing, 1st and 9. It was so weird to see in this football game. And I thought that the offense did the defense no favors in this matchup. It really was a struggle for the 49ers offense against a very good Houston Texans defense. And we talked about it all week. They're the number one scoring defense in the NFL. They only give up 14.7 points per game. They only allow 15 points to the 49ers in this one. And the defense really showed up. But I thought that they were even better than advertised, at least in this matchup. They just never let the 49ers get in rhythm on offense, especially in the first half. All kinds of threes and outs. Thomas Morstead seeing the most action that he's seen all season. And it was a really tough performance for the 49ers. But in this one, I want to break it down. I want to go through, what was going on with this, why things turned out the way they did, and then start kind of looking forward at what the 49ers can do to kind of react to this. But I think there's a lot to unpack as the 49ers, physically got dominated by the Houston Texans. It was a really good performance, and Kyle Shanahan's words after the game are exactly how you have to see it. So it was a tough one. These happen. This happens sometimes. Sometimes you show up to a game, you're expecting a different outcome, and the opposing team punches you in the mouth, and you have to figure out how to respond the next week, because the games don't stop and the tough opponents don't stop. And you got to travel to New York. So you've got to regroup and you got to figure things out. But I want to go through this game and talk about what went right, what went wrong. Definitely more went wrong than went right. But there were still some bright spots in this game as well, as the 49ers lost a tough one. And I know the 2-4 record didn't look good to lose to the Houston Texans, but that is a number one defense. And we've seen the 49ers struggle with that. And I thought that there were some things that happened on offense that definitely didn't do the defense any favors. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you're listening on audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe Network, please give it a 5-star rating. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel, the title sponsor of 49ers Cutback. So the game, when you look at what the defense was doing, the defense was holding on early. They were allowing tough drives. They were allowing, them to move the ball methodically down the field. But at some point, it was going to come to a head, and the 49ers were going to be able to get stops. And they did early. They forced, 2 field goals early, which I thought were very pivotal of keeping the 49ers in the football game. And we saw a team that should have been struggling mightily when it came to pass rush, struggle mightily when it came to pass rush. And that was a big question going into this game. The much maligned Texans offensive line against a defensive line that had just lost their third pass rusher of the, really good category. You were without Nick Bosa. You were without Yetur Gross-Matos. How are you going to do without Bryce Huff? And what you saw from Robert Saleh was a consistent effort to bring the blitz. And C.J. Stroud absolutely handled that well. You got to tip your cap to CJ Stroud, 30 of 39. The things that he was able to do through the air, he was really good in this game. And that is something we hadn't seen from CJ Stroud very much. But, 318 yards, 2 touchdowns, the 1 interception to Diamo Lenore. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But, a quarterback rating of 106.6, by far his best performance of the season. This looks like the CJ Stroud we saw during his rookie season, where he was just absolutely cooking. And then you look at the run game, and as this game went on, this run game started to really cut into the 49ers defense. They were holding on early, they were battling, they were competing, but you could tell they wore down with injuries, with just playing so many snaps on defense. It was really difficult for them to be able to stop the Houston Texans down the stretch. And, Woody Marks and Nick Chubb, they did a really good job on the ground. And then when you look at what CJ Stroud was able to do scrambling, he was effective. 7 carries for 30 yards. Most of those were for first downs. And Houston did a good job in this football game. Now, one of the most interesting things going into this game was how bad Houston was on third down conversions. They were not in this game. They came in at 30% of the time they convert on third down. I thought this could be an advantage for the 49ers because the 49ers were only allowing first downs on 35% of opportunities, but not in this one. 9 of 16, phenomenal for the Houston Texans. They were the ones who got it really done on third down, and that's why they were able to continue these long drives. And you just look how lopsided things were when it comes to, like first downs and stuff. 23 first downs for the Texans to just 12 for the 49ers. They doubled them up. You look at total plays, the Houston Texans ran 75 to the 49ers just 44. And we know in the first half, it was pretty much non-existent offense from the 49ers. I think they ran 12 plays in the first half. It was pretty ridiculous. Total yards, Houston nearly went for 500 yards in this game, 475 to 223. They only had one more drive than the 49ers. So it was definitely domination by the Houston Texans in a lot of categories. 49ers couldn't get any pressure on CJ Stroud. Even though they blitzed, they got no sacks. And, this is one of those things you looked at and you said, hey, when you look at the matchup, you got a weak offensive line, or what was perceived to be a weak offensive line by the Houston Texans, going against a 49ers unit that, yes, they are dealing with injuries. Yes, they don't have their top guys, but maybe they can generate some pass rush. That did not happen. Guys were not able to generate pass rush off the edge, that's for sure, and they weren't able to get to CJ Stroud. And a lot of it you have to give credit to the blocking, to the protections that the coach put together. It was a really good protection scheme, but also to CJ Stroud. He got rid of the football. He moved in the pocket. He saw a blitz coming from the right. He threw to the right. He was very on point with what his reads were going to be, what his hots were going to be, and he executed well. And I thought that you just got to tip your cap when somebody does that. Robert Saleh knew he needed to generate pressure, and really nothing Robert Saleh did worked. I mean, he had moments, right? I mean, consistently worked because he brought Upton Stout on blitz. He did some things that did work to help this defense. But how frustrating for a defensive coordinator that you call a pass rush with 5 men, it doesn't get home. You call it with 6, it doesn't get home. You try to sit back and just rush 4, and they give up a completion that way too, consistently. So there was nothing that Robert Saleh was going to be able to do in game as far as calls or defensive adjustments that was going to change the fortunes of the 49ers defense. They were just consistently getting, taken advantage of, getting handled. We saw the Houston Texans really attack the middle of the field, really go after Upton Stout, take advantage of some bunch sets, and we saw some collisions from the 49ers. And we just saw some consistently missed tackles. Jair Brown, bad angle by Malik Mustafa. It wasn't just them, though. It was others. D. Winters missed some tackles. It wasn't an effective game for the 49ers. And a real tough one to watch if you're a fan, because those are the kind of things that you want to see them do well, is the basics, the tackling, the fundamentals. And it just wasn't one of those games. And we saw the reemergence of the 49ers run game against Atlanta. Well, it just never got going against the Houston Texans. They only had 10 rushing attempts in the whole game, because by the time the 49ers offense actually got any sort of a rhythm going, they were already down. They were losing in this game, 13-0. And the Houston Texans really took advantage of early opportunities, and they got into the end zone on their third drive of the game, and it was just like field goal, touchdown, field goal. Like they were just consistently moving the ball down the field and taking advantage of it. The one area where this is one thing that we thought was going to happen, 49ers defense continues to play well in the red zone, and they forced Houston to 1 of 5 in the red zone. That's really what kept the 49ers in the game. Houston's offense inside the red zone hasn't been bad this year. They've been 50%. Well, they were, struggling in the red zone. 49ers defense was showing up. So if you can take something away, is that when the 49ers allowed a team into the red zone, they took care of business. 1 of 5 is why the 49ers were in the mix. And, at one point, one score away in the fourth quarter. So even though they were getting dominated, they were just right there. They just couldn't effectively get another stop to give themselves a chance. And you look at the 49ers offense, and they were 2 of 2. And this is another thing that we talked about going in this game, is the Houston Texans are so tough at keeping you out of the red zone. But once you get in, you have an opportunity to score. And that was going to be the key. How many times could the 49ers get in there? I did believe the 49ers were going to be good in the red zone. They were good again. This is second straight week. They were 100% in the red zone. So it was just the struggle to even get there. Houston's defense prevented them from even getting in field goal range a bunch of times. And we never saw Eddie Pinheiro come in and kick a field goal, which was crazy. 49ers didn't lose the turnover battle, but they didn't win the turnover battle either, which is frustrating because C.J. Stroud threw that one up to De'Amon Lenoir. And I have to say this, in the moment, the coach in me was very frustrated with De'Amon Lenoir. He made the interception. He did get into field goal range. If he would have slid down, there probably would have been 1 or 2 seconds left. They would have had an opportunity for about a 52-yard field goal. He wasn't thinking about it in the moment. I'm sure he was thinking about trying to get to the end zone. And it's one of those times where situational football plays into it. But I'm not going to hate too much on him because I don't know if that would have made a huge determining factor in this game. It's not like the 49ers lost by a field goal, but I do think momentum-wise, it could have been significant. That would have made it a 16-10 game. And there's an opportunity then. You come out, now they didn't score in the first drive of that second half, but they would have been a little bit closer and things could have played out a little bit different. But that's tough, and the 49ers are just happy that they're able to generate a turnover in this one. And so, that's frustrating. But I think a lot of this has to go on the offense. And that's what I want to talk about in a second, is why the offense's ineffectiveness really affected the defense and why I don't think the defense is something that the 49ers need to worry about in some categories, but there are places they need to worry about. That is for sure. But let's talk about FanDuel. Right now, the San Francisco 49ers are favored over the New York Giants in New York next week, which is very interesting to see that they are favored. But they are a 2.5-point favorite over the Giants. Unfortunately for the Giants, they just lost Cam Scatabo to the same injury that Fred Warner got. So that's tough. Right now, the money line is plus 132 for the New York Giants, and the over-under is 47.5 in this one. So that's going to be something to watch this week. We'll see what happens with the 49ers. There's a lot that could go on when it comes to injuries. Brock Purdy could potentially be back this week, but do you want him to come back on that turf? That's a big question. Same with Ricky Pearsall. Is he going to be working back, or do they save this for week 10? Do you run the risk of going into week 10 against the Rams, at 5-4 if you were to lose a game to the New York Giants, or you just say, hey, these guys are healthy, let's play them even if it's on the turf? And then you've got Brandon Ayuk as well, who the 21-day window could be open for this week. We'll see how that goes. So 49ers could be getting some reinforcements on offense. They need reinforcements on defense. Guys like Yetur Gross-Matos are needed desperately, and we don't know how far off a guy like Bryce Huff is, but they definitely need to get him back. They probably need to get Spencer Burford back on offense as well. So it's going to be interesting. Burford has 1 week of practice in. There's probably a good chance he's ready to go next week. But the 49ers need a lot of defensive help as well in this one, because they are just hurting with the injury to Sam Okuwanu. That one looks like it could be a few weeks at least, dealing probably with a high ankle sprain. We'll see. And then you've got the injuries to D. Winters and others. So it's going to be tough. 49ers continue to deal with injuries, and that, you're starting to get injuries stacked at certain positions, and they've got to play a lot better. So let's talk about the 49ers offense. And in the first half, it was just really, really bad. And it's not like you're going to look at Christian McCaffrey's numbers, and they're not going to be that effective. And you're going to be like, why didn't the 49ers get a run game going? They really didn't have an opportunity to get the run game going. So we knew D'Amico Ryans was going to make it very difficult for the 49ers to run. It was going to be one of those games, and Christian McCaffrey averaged 3.1 yards per carry, where that's what it was going to be, a 3 to 4 yard per carry average for Christian McCaffrey. But what you're hoping is that you could methodically move the football down the field and stay on schedule. The 49ers did not stay on schedule. They struggled consistently, and Mac Jones was under pressure early. I thought early we saw some of the things we were worried about, that matchup of Colt McKivitz versus Will Anderson, and it really reared its ugly head early on in this football game as Mac Jones was getting pressure, and Will Anderson is another one of those guys. He's kind of built in that speed category that gives Colt McKivitz problems, and he did. And Colt McKivitz, they know that he struggles. They try to give help when they can, but there's times where they can't always give him help, and they've got to have him step up. And I thought that, he struggled a little bit, but he wasn't the only one. I seen Matt Hennessy miss a blitz pick up, and you got someone in Mac Jones's face, and he had to get rid of the football more quickly. So this was consistent. I did think it was interesting when the 49ers went on their final drive of the first half, when they're able to get down there and get the big touchdown to George Kittle, which was a phenomenal play. But Nick Zakelj was playing left guard, and the reason Nick Zakelj is playing left guard in that situation is he's the better pass blocker between him and Connor Kobe. I thought situational, that made a lot of sense what Chris Foerster did. Put Nick Zakelj in there, let him handle the pass blocking. He's better than Connor Kobe pass blocking, and it's not really that close. If Nick Zakelj could run block a lot better than he does, he could start. He's just not. So when you look at those two guys, Connor Kobe's more effective run blocking, Nick Zakelj's more effective pass blocking. They just don't have a complete left guard right now. And for Connor Kobe, a lot of it's because he's young. For Nick Zakelj, it's because he just can't get movement in the run game. And that's something that he's had a problem with since he came into the NFL. And it's a problem for the 49ers right now when you look at the offensive line. So it was a tough battle for the offensive line. I thought at times they were ineffective, and they allowed extra pressure onto Mac Jones. And then I thought sometimes Mac Jones made it a little bit more difficult for himself, holding onto the football, missing a few of the reads. I thought they did a good job of pointing it out on the TV telecast as well. You got open Christian McCaffrey, doesn't deliver the football. There was other ones, open Demarcus Robinson. And so these are situations where those are in the route concept. Those should be balls that are thrown. And so, Mac Jones didn't help himself in some categories, and then sometimes he looked great. There were some tough throws that he made and some plays that his wide receivers didn't make. I think the first one, Juwan Jennings, down the field, that deep vertical pass, it should have been caught by Juwan Jennings, and he wasn't able to catch it. Now, if you're coaching it from a quarterback coach's standpoint, Mac Jones should have led Juwan Jennings further to the pylon, so more to the sideline, away from the defender, and he had to readjust his route and try to get more vertical to catch the ball. So in that category, yes, the throw wasn't perfect. As a quarterback coach, you're going to talk to Mac Jones about, hey, you lead him there. There's no defender there. There's no risk for an interception, but that's an easier pass to catch for Juwan Jennings and a better opportunity for him to run away from the corner. But you're also throwing a deep vertical pass, which is tough to have great accuracy. For Juwan Jennings, though, it hit your hands. I know you adjusted to it. It's a tough catch, but it hit your hands, and you're one of the better wide receivers on this football team. You've got to make that catch, and he did it. And that was a big play. Now, later on in the game, I love the fact Mac Jones went back to him on 3rd and 17. Juwan Jennings competed, went and made the catch. I thought that was very big for Mac Jones. And then he made a crazy throw to George Kittle in triple coverage, basically. The safety Bullock for the Houston Texans, I think he thought he was going to have an interception, and George Kittle just absolutely snagged it. That was such a big clutch play at the end of the first half, and I think it got everyone believing, like, hey, wait 1 second, 49ers got a shot in this one. The People's tight end gets into the end zone, and he wasn't the only tight end on National Tight End Day to get into the end zone for the 49ers. but also Jake Tonjes. And Tonjes scored his 4th touchdown of the season, consistently been a pretty good pass catcher for the 49ers, but you just couldn't get enough offense. And when you can't get enough offense and you keep getting these 3-and-outs, you put a lot of pressure on the defense. And I thought this was one of the biggest stats in the entire game, and why the 49ers defense couldn't hold up down the stretch and why they couldn't get a stop to give them the football back. Houston Texans, 41 minutes and 22 seconds time of possession to 18:38 for the 49ers. That discrepancy alone is why your defense is wearing down and breaking down as this game's going on. More snaps, 75 snaps on defense is ridiculous. You were going in this game hoping offensively you were going to have 60 to 65. You couldn't even get 50. Then defensively, you're never going into a game thinking you're going to give up. You're going to be on the field for 75 snaps. They're going to have the ball for over 41 minutes. That's going to wear down the defense. The offense needed to string together drives to keep the defense off the field. That's when your defense is going to be the best, closing out games and finishing down the stretch. And I really thought it was the ineffectiveness of the offense that is the big reason why this defense struggled in this football game. And there's reasons why the defense wasn't great. I brought up a little bit, and we'll talk about that in a second. But this complementary football is a real thing. And the 49ers offense did not complement the defense in this game. The defense was holding on early, right? Long drives, that's you don't want long drives, but if they're going to be a long drive that ends in a field goal, you feel like that's a win when it comes to the defense. You hold up. You're 1 of 5 inside the red zone. That should keep you in the football game. You should be there in a game where you're scoring touchdowns and they're scoring field goals. The problem was the 49ers offense early was just not good. And like I said, it was the pressure on Mac Jones. It was the penalties. It was the ineffectiveness to convert on third down. And the Houston Texans are good on third down. They give up 32% of the time. They give up first downs. But I thought the 49ers really couldn't get out of their own way when it came to offense. And when they got into that last drive, I think they had the ball of the first half. They had 10 plays. 10. That is ridiculous. You got to be more effective on offense. And I think Kyle Shanahan, what he said in the presser is right. I mean, and it's really because of the offense. And that wears your defense down. And then you start dealing with injuries, and all of a sudden, Sam Okuwanu's out. For times in the game, you had Jordan Elliott out. He didn't come back. He's still hurt. You had Alfred Collins. He was out. When those things happen, it puts an extra strain on your rotation. Now, all of a sudden, Kevin Givens is playing more snaps, and he was expected to play, or Robert Beal Jr. And then when it comes down to the time where you got to close out, Mikael Williams is basically playing every snap. Does he really have enough gas now to go get C.J. Stroud? No. And that was the thing. By the time it got to the fourth quarter, this team was without any juice on defense. What you saw against Atlanta was a team that had an offense that dominated, that took care of business, that kept the defense off the field for the most part. And you saw a defense that was ready to rally and make plays. And that's exactly what they used to do in 2019. 49ers offense would dominate. They would win the time of possession. They would run the ball effectively. Then the defense would come in and they were fresh, and they would go out there and they would get after the quarterback. That's a problem. Now, when it comes to the defensive struggles, it has to start with tackling. 49ers need to be more effective tackling in the secondary. And I thought there were way too many missed tackles. I thought that there were many missed angles as well. A lot of it coming from the safeties. And I thought Jair Brown had some struggles in the open field making tackles, especially that early tackle he could have made short of the sticks for the Houston Texans could have caused a get off the field situation, a time where a Fairbairn has to kick a longer field goal, but also, extra 2 first downs. That's 8 more plays a year on the field, presumably. So some of that is on him. Now, I did think that he had some good plays around the line of scrimmage, coming in there and making some tackles. So I want to give him credit on that. I don't think it was all bad for Jair Brown, but that's one of the things that's frustrating about Jair compared to a guy like Marquise Siegel, is Marquise Siegel makes those tackles. And then I thought that Malik Mustafa had the same sort of situation. The third down situation, they throw it to Schultz out on the side, and he's 4 or 5 yards short of the sticks, and Malik Mustafa comes flying in out of control, runs right past him, and Dalton Schultz is able to get a first down. Those kinds of plays are backbreakers. And so, you see those things and it's frustrating. Now, I thought Jair also didn't look great in coverage. He got cooked over the middle of the field a little bit. So it was a tough one for 49ers safeties in this matchup. I thought they went after Upton Stout a little bit as well. I thought he competed. He was there. He was playing physical. He was tackling well, putting pressure on CJ Stroud. So I didn't think it was a complete terrible performance from everyone, but I thought it was a tough one for the safeties. I really did think they struggled. And then I think when you look at the 49ers defensive line, they just can't generate pass rush. And, they tried stunts. They tried blitzes. And you have really one legit pass rusher left on this defensive line, and he got hurt in this game as far as from the edge position, and that's Sam Okuwanu. And I thought that, once Okuwanu went down, there was definitely going to be no pass rush from the defensive line. That's not what Robert Bill Jr. has done in his time in San Francisco. He's basically become a edge defender that's done pretty well. Travis Gibson really hasn't done anything as far as generating pressure, and you just can't get that from Mikael Williams. A lot of times they put focus on Mikael Williams, especially without Gross Matos, without Bryce Huff. They really need Bryce Huff and Gross Matos back. Just those two guys coming back alone will drastically change the effectiveness of the 49ers defensive ends and edge rushers and generating pressure. But I do think they need to go out and they need to get someone. I think that they need to go make a trade if they want to stay relevant in the NFC and compete for a playoff spot. They do need to push forward and make a trade for an edge rusher. I'm not saying it needs to be a big name, but the Tennessee Titans are willing to trade Arden Key. I do think that that's a possibility. You look at the New York Jets, they just got their first win, but they have some potential players there. You need to add somebody on the edge. And if I'm the 49ers, I'm with the Sam Okuwanu injury, you might want to look at potentially adding a guy like Cleveland Farrell, who's out on the open market, and somebody that knows how to play in this defense already that can play base down sets, because who knows how long Okuwanu's out with the ankle injury. If it ends up being something significant, he could be out 6 to 8 weeks and a IR player. So 49ers definitely got to address edge rush. I think that's one of the big things. This defense can't be effective with having to blitz every time they need to generate pass rush. They need to be able to generate pass rush with a 4 or 5 man pressure. And sometimes Robert Saleh has to bring 6 guys. That's not going to be consistent. So that's something that I want to see from the 49ers. But, we're going to have a new week coming up. 49ers are going to be facing the New York Giants. The new set of obstacles to overcome, and they're going to have to recalibrate. This doesn't mean that it's over. I do think that this was a tough loss. You had the Jacksonville Jaguars loss, which was frustrating because you turned the ball over so much and you should have won. The Tampa Bay game, same thing. You turned the ball over. You were in the mix. You should have won. This one, you pretty much got dominated from the beginning to the end. And even though you fought back and you got within one score, I don't think it ever really felt like the 49ers were going to come back and win this game. So you've got to regroup. You're as good as your last game. So go out there and handle business. And like Kyle Shanahan said, you got to play pissed off next week. You got to go out there. You've got to execute against the New York Giants. You've got to take it to them, and you've got to improve to 6-3. If you do, things will look a lot better going into that game against the Rams. But if you don't, it's going to be really tough. And so Rams, Seahawks, they're right now in position to where they want to be. 49ers, moved up and down. When it came to the NFC, they went from number 2 to down to number 7. That happens, especially with everyone bottled up. This thing is a long fight. We'll see what happens. But, yeah, I just thought that the offensive struggles were really bad. And, of course, I'm looking forward to doing all my breakdowns over on Patreon. You can come check those out. Those will be available. I'll get the video sometime today. And I'll break them all down. Usually I do it on Tuesday morning. I'll start putting out, the breakdowns, offense, defense, and we'll get into it. Oh, one thing I got to mention, Brian Robinson did a great job on kick return. I want to give him props. That kick return that he had to end the first half really set up the 49ers. And I thought special teams continues to get better and better for the San Francisco 49ers. Brad Boyer doing a great job making special teams more effective. I thought that they did that again. So Brian Robinson, a welcomed addition to that kick return room for the 49ers, and I thought that was good. And we'll have more breakdowns on this, but of course, we want to start turning the page also and focusing on the New York Giants. We'll be doing that this week, videos like Tell of the Tape and stuff like that. So thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you're listening audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe Network, please give it a 5-star rating. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Until then, stay safe. Remember, the right way is always the 49ers way.